Hey everyone! Thanks a ton for supporting the channel. It really means a lot. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us how we can make things even better, or share your own story. We'd love to hear from you.
The moment my hand touched the altar, it was already too late. Knowledge surged through me like a flood breaking a dam. Centuries of memories, rituals, whispered instructions carved into my bones. I became the shadow every Halloween night needed tending, every barrier patched, every offering laid. I saw it all. I finally understood. The rituals weren't evil. They were maintenance, scaffolding, holding the world together. But that understanding came with a price. Me. Piece by piece, I wasn't Maya Chen anymore. At first, the changes were subtle. I would wander back to Salem's Ridge at night without remembering the walk. Compulsion tugged at me, gentle at first, then impossible to resist. Each time I performed rites my hands shouldn't have known. Arranging stones into perfect patterns, burning herbs I couldn't name, their smoke curling like skeletal hands reaching into the air, whispering words that tasted of ash and starlight. The town noticed. Neighbors watched me with fear, yet also recognition. Old families began leaving offerings on their doorsteps. Not candy, but soul cakes baked from recipes whispered across generations. Windows were marked with crooked chalk symbols, meant to keep whatever I was becoming from crossing their thresholds. The shadow never left me. In the cemetery, beneath moonless skies, it spoke in a voice like wind dragging through bone.
The ancients wake. They ruled before your kind learned fear.
The rituals didn't preserve balance out of kindness. They prepared the way for their return. All my books, all my archives, I thought I was uncovering how people protected themselves. No, they were grooming the world, weakening it, and I was the next link in the chain. On Halloween Eve, the air itself felt wrong. The veil didn't bend gradually, it strained, trembling like glass about to shatter. And on the night of the final ritual, I stood at the altar. Salem's Ridge gathered around me, their faces pale, their eyes hollowed with acceptance. Each carried something sacred, broken mirrors reflecting otherworldly light, black candles that burned cold, soul cakes pulsing faintly as if alive. And when I opened my mouth, the words weren't mine. They were older than memory, spilling in a language that scorched my throat raw. The ground split, the air roared, reality fractured like a mirror struck by a hammer. The veil didn't bend, it broke. And through the break poured things that had waited too long. They weren't shadows, they weren't gods, they were geometry unmade. Angles that hurt to look at, voices like claws scraping inside my skull. They flowed across the land, consuming the unwilling, possessing the willing. And that was when the truth slammed into me. I wasn't chosen to prevent catastrophe, I was chosen to create it. The shadow hadn't preserved old ways for memory's sake. It had been preparing the world for conquest. Every soul cake, every grave offering, every whispered chant, it was scaffolding for collapse. And now, I was the anchor. Maya Chen, the student, the skeptic, the seeker, was gone. What remained was a vessel, Inhuman intelligence gleamed behind my eyes, stretching across my mind like wires pulled taut. I had become a bridge, a doorway. The cycle was complete. And yet, before my human self slipped away, I saw more. Other towns, other students waking from shadow-haunted dreams. The pattern spreading like infection, waiting for new hands, new keepers, to mistake doom for discovery. At the altar, with the world unraveling around me, I smiled, but the smile wasn't mine. The ancients had returned, and they were only just beginning. Still, sometimes, in the hollow space between dreams, I hear something faint. Not the ancients, not the shadow, my own voice, buried but not yet gone, calling out to anyone who might listen. So I'll ask you, when the shadows find you, and they will you mistake them for your own curiosity? Or will you realize, too late, that you've already opened the door?
When I opened my eyes, the archive basement was gone. No books, no shelves, only mist curling around my ankles, thick, alive, like the ground itself was breathing. I was standing in Salem's Ridge, but not the Salem I knew. This was different. Streets drowned in fog, crooked decorations strung across doors, jack-o'-lanterns burning like watchful eyes. They didn't look festive. They looked like warnings. Had I already chosen? Had the shadow pulled me here the moment I met its days? The shadow emerged beside me, darker than the fog, its presence solid in ways that felt wrong. It leaned close, voice scraping like stone on stone.
This place remembers. The old ways run deeper than concrete can bury.
And then it showed me. The fog shifted, scenes forming in its folds. Suddenly, I was standing in Salem's Ridge in 1692. Colonial streets flickered alive, hooded figures carrying baskets of sold cakes that glowed faintly from within. Families handed them over with trembling hands, fear etched deep in their faces. Soul cakes weren't sweet tokens, they were contracts. Every bite tied the living to the dead in debts that could never be repaid. The vision warped. Mischief night. What I always believed to be vandalism, broken windows, overturned carts, smashed fences, wasn't chaos. It was ritual. Every broken object formed a pattern. Every crooked line fed something unseen. Mischief wasn't rebellion. It was sacrifice. The shadow's voice followed me through each shifting scene.
Your people thought they abandoned these rights. They thought modern lights and modern laws erased them. But the balance between worlds does not vanish.
The vision twisted again, a graveyard under a moonless sky. I saw cracked marrows glinting, black candles burning with cold flame, twisted roots pulled from cursed soil. My throat tightened. These weren't superstitions. They were infrastructure, rituals that stitched the barrier between the living and the dead, and we had let them fade. The fog dissolved. I was standing in the present again in Salem's Ridge. Headstones leaned at broken angles, inscriptions warped, illegible. The air vibrated with pressure so heavy that it made my teeth ache. At the center stood the altar Elizabeth Hartwell had written in her journal, my ancestors' words carved into stone. Symbols writhed across its slick surface, alive, shifting under my gaze. The shadow waited, its form almost human now.
This is why I called you. The old rituals must be performed again, properly, before the damage becomes irreversible. Only someone with the sight can hold the balance.
My chest tightened as I stepped forward. The carvings weren't Celtic, not Norse, not any human script I had studied. And yet, staring at them, I understood. They folded into my mind like a language I had always known.
I can teach you.
The shadow urged, its voice smooth now, almost gentle.
The cakes, the mischief, the offerings. You could bridge the old and the new. Through you, the worlds would remain whole.
My hand rose, trembling, hovering above the stone. The moment my fingertips brushed its surface, visions slammed into me. Not history, futures. I saw myself chanting in tongues older than humanity, lighting flames that burned blue, kneeling in graveyards as the veil thinned. I saw myself as the conduit, the bridge Elizabeth had once been. Then the vision shifted. Refusal. I saw the barriers collapse, the dead flooding into the living world, cities burning, skies splitting, shadows like oceans swallowing everything. The visions tore at me, binding or collapse, balance or annihilation. Both demanded my hand. The visions vanished. I was back at the altar. My hand hovered inches above the writhing stone. My pulse thundered in my ears. The shadow whispered one word.
Choose.
My lungs burned. One choice would bind me forever. One choice would doom everything I loved. But I couldn't move. The silence pressed in thick, suffocating, until I thought I would shatter underneath it. And in that moment, with the fate of two worlds trembling in my hand, nothing was certain. Would you preserve the old ways to save the world, or let them die, no matter the cost?
It started with the shadow at the end of my bed. Every October, without fail, the same nightmare returned. A tall figure, motionless, patient, stood in the corner of my room, watching me with eyes that glimmered like shattered glass. At first, I told myself it was stress. Senior year at Salem University was pressure enough. Midterms, research deadlines, the weight of expectations. But excuses only carried me so far. Because the shadow didn't stay in my dreams. I began to see it elsewhere, reflected in shop windows, lingering at the end of hallways, hovering in the crowded lecture halls where I thought I was safe. Every time I blinked, it was closer, as though the world itself had folded to let it in. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. Something had noticed me. I did what any folklore student would do. I went digging. At first, it felt like a distraction, a way to rationalize the creeping dread. If I could turn fear into research, maybe I could control it. But the deeper I went into the archives, the stranger the trail became. Scattered references stretched across centuries, scraps of sermons, hushed diary entries, marginal notes, all described a tall figure appearing to the sighted every Halloween, always tethered to rituals older than Christianity itself. I wanted answers. Instead, I found warnings. One night, silence heavy as stone in the basement archives, I uncovered a journal bound in fading leather. The year was 1692. The author, Elizabeth Hartwell. Her handwriting trembled across each fragile page. She wrote,
The shadow is not malevolent. It is patient. It waits for those who can see, for those who can serve as bridges between what was and what will be again. The old customs never died, they only slumbered.
Elizabeth described dreams like wine. Dreams of rituals. Soul cakes left for the dead, offerings laid at graves, nights of mischief designed not to amuse, but to blur the line between order and chaos. I whispered her name loud. Hartwell. And then the realization struck like ice in my veins. Hartwell wasn't just a name in history books. It was mine! That night, the shadow returned. But this time, it didn't come in a dream. It stood by my dorm window, taller than the frame, outlined in a cold ribbon of moonlight.
You've been searching,
It said. The words didn't pass through the air. They vibrated through my ribs, through my bones.
Good. The time of awakening draws near. I need one who understands the old ways.
My voice cracked. What are you? It smiled, though its face was only darkness.
I am continuity, the thread between past and present. Keeper of traditions your kind abandoned, but never erased. You've studied enough to know this.
And I had. My throat clenched as I whispered back, the rituals of Salem's Ridge, soul cakes, mischief night, grave offerings, they're connected to you.
Through me,
It corrected, stepping closer.
I am the vessel, as you will be.
My stomach dropped, hollow and cold.
You are Hartwell's bloodline.
It continued.
Elizabeth was chosen. Now you are too.
I couldn't breathe. Elizabeth, who had written trembling notes centuries before, was suddenly more than research. She was blood. She was inheritance. The shadow raised what might have been a hand. The temperature collapsed. Frost crawled across the window pane.
Come,
It whispered.
let me show you what your research could never reveal. You were born for this.
I stood frozen. Every instinct screamed run, but another voice, quieter, more dangerous, whispered, stay. The seeker in me, the student who lived for answers, was louder than fear. Slowly, against all sense, I raised my eyes and met its gaze. The darkness stared back. Endless and unblinking. The air between us quivered with expectation, as the one single heartbeat could decide the path of everything. Would I take its hand? Would I condemn myself if I refused? The silence stretched. It pressed down like a weight, suffocating, patient, eternal. And in that moment, nothing was certain. What would you do if the thing you feared most offered you the very truth that you had been searching for?
Stay spooked. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling stories.